Let's talk about variables. Since we do data analysis, we play with a number of variables. What are variables? So variables are the things that can take different values. For example, height is a variable, length is a variable, maybe weight is also a variable. But these variables are different than some variables like those variables that have discrete outcomes. So for example, sex is a different kind of variable where you have one of the two values, either male or female. Weight can take different values like 18 pounds, 18.1, 2, 3, and there is a gradual increment in that. So let's see what major types of the variables are there in this section. A variable is a characteristic of a sample that can have different values. It can be quantitative or qualitative. The variables are generally divided into quantitative and qualitative. In quantitative, we have continuous and we have discrete, where we quantify them so we can get the numbers from them. In qualitative, we have nominal and ordinal. Let's look into it, what these are. A continuous variable can be measured to an arbitrary level based on one's choice. So for example, in weights, you can have different grades, like you can say you can have whole numbers or you can go with fractions. In fractions, you can go with 1 decimal point or more than that. So you can you can have these continuous increments in it. In discrete, you can measure it as a whole number. So there is nothing like fraction. So there can be either, for example, if you are looking into so those questions where you have yes and or no situations. So it can be either yes or no. Somebody can be either a male or a female. So those kind of examples are discrete. Ones or zeros also. In qualitative variables, which are non-numericals, you can have nominal. For example, you can have colors. So you can have blue, green, red. You can have race. You can have nationality. Sometimes you have a little bit grading in it also. So for example, you have inactive, active, and then you can have hyperactive. So those kind of variables are called as ordinal variables. We talk about classification variables, and we talk about the variables that can be used as input to a system. So for example, you can have a classification variable like age. So these variables are actually the independent variables. So the other variables depend on them. So for example, age does not depend on anybody, and but the weight or height, they depend on age. So in that case, we can say age is a independent variable or a classification variable. We can also have a response variable. So something which is responding to this independent variable we talked in the previous slide, our classification variable. So as weight depends on age, so in that case age is an independent variable, a classification variable, but the response variable is weight, or we can also say this is a dependent variable. So the values that are recorded as response to some treatments, and these values change as a consequence of changes in other values in the system, and they are generally represented as y. So here in this example we have x and y. Y is light intensity, and then there is some depth within the C. So intensity is measured in some units, 0.021, where 1 stands for 100%, and these are basically in terms of probabilities. So zero point 0.2 is 20%, zero point 0.4, and up till this is up till 1. So intensity is 100% at the top of the C. As you increase the depth, and you can see that the increase in depth decreases this light intensity. So if you look into this depth, that is an independent variable. So it does not depend on intensity, but intensity depends on this depth. So in that case, this one is independent variable, and light intensity, which is dependent on this, is a dependent variable. Within the variables, we can say random or fixed variables. So random is if you are sampling some, say for example, you want to sample the weights of the students, and you are visiting a university, and there is a chance that you will find these students if you go on the weekdays, and if you go on the weekends, the chances are low. So now here your recordings, or your generating those numbers is dependent upon some probability distribution. So in that case, these variables, they become random variables. So random variable is a variable whose value is subject to variation by chance. A binomial random variable counts how often a particular event occurs in a fixed number of trials or tries. So we'll talk about binomial random variables when we talk about binomial distributions. So over there you will have some probability of getting some event versus the probability of not getting that event. So those kind of things will be dealt later in the binomial distributions. So in this section, we have seen that variables, they can take any values and they can be qualitative or quantitative, whereas the random variables can take any values depending upon a probability distribution.